It's exciting, but it's almost a call to arms, because at the same time, like it scares the hell out of me. Like I don't know if it's an industry I want to be a part of if it doesn't change. I certainly don't want my children being a part of it in its current state.
Hi, and welcome back to the 90-Day Challenge.
It is exciting to see the momentum in certain pockets as we go, and there are people out there who actually genuinely care about the people on their site and want to make a difference. The sad thing is, though, it's only the tip of the pencil.
Today's book review is going to be The Lean Builder by Joe Donnarumo and Keon Zandy. Hopefully, you've already read the book before today's book review. If you haven't, pick it up on Audible or a physical copy, which I'll have both links in the description down below. This is one of the best books when it comes to applying lean to actual construction. This book is for builders on the front line to help them understand how to continuously improve, how to foster that through building a culture of trust, respect, and accountability. By the end of this video, if you leave a comment, I'll be sending out a free copy of The Lean Builder, the book that we're talking about. So, drop a comment down below and let me know your insights from the book, The Lean Builder, as it applies to improving our planning, scheduling, and executing in construction. I hope that you enjoy this book review. For those of you who are watching this video, welcome. This is the book review of The Lean Builder. For any of you that haven't picked it up, I highly recommend it. And personally, my favorite version of the book is doing it on audio. The audio version was done extremely well, so pick up the book. The actual physical copy does have some really cool pictures in it, and it shows kind of the board so you can kind of visualize it a little bit better. But I highly recommend picking up the book if you haven't already and reading it. Today, we have with us Joe Donarumo. He is one of the co-authors of The Lean Builder, and he's going to help us go through a book review of why lean in construction, where to start, and kind of why he even decided to write a book in the first place. And so to introduce Joe, Joe is the VP of operations for Linebeck Construction. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, it's actually Linebeck.
Linebeck. That's
Linebeck. Yeah. All good.
And Joe, if you'll do a little quick introduction of kind of your career and what led you to be in that role at Linebeck, sure, and kind of that whole progression of where you started and how you ended up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew actually within high school, I knew I wanted to build. I didn't quite know really what I wanted to build or what I wanted to do. I thought at that point in time, in my life, like success, like in my mind, was like having a pickup truck and like building custom houses. Like I thought that was like the end all be all for construction. And somehow I managed to get up to Oklahoma State, and I did a few internships, and I realized I don't think residential construction's right for me. And that's kind of where I started gravitating towards commercial construction. When I got out of school, I started my journey in the industry with a company called Flintco, a large national firm. They were based out of Tulsa. And I had the kind of the unique opportunity, all of the building that I did. I actually interned for a couple of years while I was in school and went to work for them, obviously, post-graduation. But I did all my work in Stillwater, which is where Oklahoma State University is. So I got to work for one client for like the first 6 years of my career with Flintco, which was really interesting. And it was started out as a project engineer and was kind of going along that project manager path, but I always seemed to notice I was always engaged more when I was like out in the field, like either checking an assembly or a detail or like pulling a dimension, checking back to a submittal. And I think it caught the eye of a guy named Vic Alford, who was kind of like our general superintendent field ops guy at the time. And I remember kind of Vic walking over to me. He's like, I think you might like being a superintendent, Joe. He's like, what do you think about it? And I was like, I don't know what to think. I said, but I'll go home and I'll, think about it, pray about it, talk to my wife, and, I'll give you an answer in a week or so, but I've never really thought about it. And that was it. Like that was like the why in the road, and I made the jump to the field and never looked back. And I've always been very engaged by being in the field, because to me it was always where the action was. It was always where the rubber hit the road, and there was just, it was so engaging to look back at the end of the day, even though physically I wasn't the individual putting the work in place, but I just felt more connected to the built environment. Actually looking back at the end of the day and like seeing the 90 pieces of steel that's in the air, and the of being able to help be a part of that and help plan and lead and execute work with our subject matter experts, or wonderful trade partners. It was so engaging to be a part of. So fast forward, I had some kids. We had our first son. We were pregnant with our second son, and I grew up outside the Fort Worth area, and we wanted to get back, and that's where my journey with Lindbeck got started. So been with the firm about 10 years. And that's really where my lean journey started about 10 years ago when I made the transition to Lindbeck. It's where I met Keon. It was where I was introduced to lean principles. And once I got a taste of it, and once I saw, man, there's a different way to schedule, there's a different way to get buy-in and engagement from your trade partner, I was absolutely hooked. And I kind of always refer to it as like the Matrix. Like once you've taken the pill, like you can't go back. Like you can't look at work the same way. It's like looking at waste on a job site. Like once you have the lens to walk a job site and just see all the waste that surrounds you, you can't stop looking at it. It's just like seeing dollar signs all over the job site. And that was it. So started as a superintendent and just kind of worked up through the organization. And currently, as you said, I work to support our field operations, and with a specific focus on safety, quality, productivity, through implementing our lean operating system and our QA/QC protocols, as well as our very robust safety program that we're really, really proud of. And that's it. That's maybe way more than you wanted, but hopefully that gives the canvas a little color on who I am.
No, that's perfect. So it's funny that you mentioned the Matrix, right? And your Morpheus would have been Vic, right? So like Vic shows up, and I wonder, do you ever like think what life would be like if Vic hadn't pulled you aside and kind of tugged on you towards the superintendent route? Does that day live in infamy, or are you glad about that, or like?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I don't think I give it too much thought. Like I don't ever go back, because I always, being of faith, I always feel like you're in the moment in time you were designed to be in, and there's a reason why you are where you at in that specific time. But yeah, for sure, if it wasn't, it's always interesting to think, if it wasn't for Vic in that conversation, would I still have naturally gravitated this direction? Would I've had connected those dots? And I think I probably would have, as much engagement that I had in being in the field as an engineer, for sure.
That's awesome. So we had talked about the reason to do this book review and
Yeah.
what the industry needs and what it might not know that it needs.
Yeah.
And we're inundated today with try this new thing, do that new thing, right? And so the biggest question I always get is, well, what's different about this new thing, right, that everyone's all excited about, So that's the question, is why lean? Like what makes the biggest difference with lean?
Just to start, even like before I dive into like the why lean, it's just our industry is so fragmented, and it's just job sites, just in the way companies do business in general. Like right now, we just create so many more issues for ourselves. Like when we were just having this talk the other day, and I'll do this example on you. I'll have a little fun with you real quick. So Spence, let me ask you, like in the current state of the supply chain within the industry, and the importance of going through like submittals and expediting, on a scale of 1 to 10, Spencer, in your opinion, how important is submittals, expediting, procurement on a current day construction site, given our current environment right now?
How important is it?
How important is it? Scale of 1 to 10, how important is it right now to manage that properly on a job site?
10.
10. Most people are like 13 and a half. Like,
Yeah.
right? So let me ask you this, Spencer. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the experience level of the individual that we put in charge of submittals and expediting on a freaking job site?
1.
Why? Why do we put a level 10 or level 13 and a half responsibility to sometimes a summer intern who shows up on the job site and here's a submittal log? Like, they've never looked through documents. They don't know a constructability review. They don't know they don't know come here from Sikkim. But yet we put that responsibility of the success of our job site on the least experienced individual. Why do we do that stuff? And that's what I'm just saying, like, there's so much more before we even get into lean. There's just so much more that companies in our industry could do to just get a little bit better each day to try to start curbing the dysfunction within our industry. For me, oftentimes we were kind of talking about this before we got into this recording of, oftentimes I'm talking to different leaders or a different superintendent, or maybe it's a trade partner, and they're like, why should I try this? Like, I've been working for my firm for 25 years. Like, I've never
delivered a project late, always been in budget, right? It's like,
I've made my firm a lot of money. My clients ask for me by name, never missed a date. Why in the heck should I change the way that I run my projects and my site? And this is kind of like the elevator pitch. Like, this is the why. And oftentimes in that environment, like, I'll take the spotlight and I'll shift it over and I'll say, well, okay, before I answer that, let's just talk about the current state of our industry right now. And let's at least gain some consensus on what our industry looks like right now. And I'll talk about design drawings first. And I'll be like, okay, let me ask you this. You've been in the industry for 30 years. Would it be fair to say 30 years ago, when you got a set of contract documents for construction, that you had more confidence in the ability to take those drawings and create a plan of how you're going to go through and execute that project? And it'll be kind of quiet for a second, and then I'll get a smirk, and then I'll get a head nod. They're like, yeah, Joe, absolutely. 30 years ago, the drawings were better. And again, for all my trade partner friend or my design partner friends listening, this isn't a knock on our design community, but if we're going to unpack what's going on with there, our design team members are being commoditized, much like our trade partners in the current state. The speed, the market that owners are requiring the design teams to get through some type of a validation through SDDD and implementations, like, at an alarming rate. Like, back in the day, we used to have fast track jobs. Well, everything's fast track now. Like, there's no differential between the two. Talk about resources. You remember what happened in 2008, 9, 10. We had a significant outflux of design professionals leave our industry. So we have no people, we have no money, we have no time. We're now living in the greatest dependence on copy paste technology that we ever have. And we're grabbing that system and assembly and detail that worked a couple of jobs ago. We put it into the documents, and half the time in our current state, we'll get a permit set, and we're finishing design through ASIs and RFIs because we just don't have, for the reasons I discussed. It's really our current state. And every time I'm talking to someone, they're like, Joe, you just described my current state. That's exactly what we deal with contract drawings on a day in and day out. And the reason I just start there is, okay, so that's what's going on with drawings. And we talk about, okay, now let's jump to skilled labor. And I'll be like, okay, let me ask you this. 30 years ago, or you've been in the industry for 30 years, when was the last time you had a true blue master journeyman mason on your project? Like, I don't see them anymore. They're unicorns. And I'm like, exactly. And we'll talk about skilled labor, and I won't get into skilled labor on, in this discussion, but we all know it's a significant issue. There's no floodgate that's about to be raised. We're going to have this influx of skilled labor. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We're taking the right steps to start curbing that. But the problems that we're dealing with in our current state on our job site are going to get worse with regards to how we're managing the skilled labor that we have. Talk about just labor in general. We have a significant amount of unfulfilled labor within the industry. Talk about our trade partners. If I was to ask that same leader who's been in the industry 30 years ago, I'd be like, let me ask you this. 30 years ago, when you had a trade partner show up, how did they show up? What did it look like? They're like, well, they had their plans. They were highlighted. They had an idea of how they were going to go through and phase and sequence and do their work, and they had a plan. I was like, well, describe to me what it looks like today. What's the current state look like? They're like, well, Joe, when they show up, either I'm printing the drawings or I'm giving them the link to Box or Procore to go download the drawings for the first time. And I'm like, yeah, it's about right. That's about what I experienced. And just like our design part, I'm not throwing stones at our trade partner friends. And I mean, when you think about, they're the ones managing the skilled labor issue within our industry. They're the ones dealing with projects that don't get the budget, that don't start on time after they've already had a work plan associated for when they were going to go put labor on the job. Or they're dealing with the 85% of the industry who have superintendents who aren't issuing a schedule, have no flow on their job. Their project's a dumpster fire. They show up because they're told to show up, and they look around and the make ready needs haven't been established for them and they're not ready to start. So they're dealing with all this craziness, and it's no wonder why they're constantly living in a reactive state.
Everyone would have that same outcome, right? Anyone in that situation would have the same problems.
I would. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? Okay, so we move from, now we've talked about trade partner. Let's just talk about communication in general. Like in our industry today, we have 5 generations, 5 different unique generations within the workforce for industry. It's like mind-boggling when you think about that. And the interesting thing about that is every generation communicates differently. In structures within organizations, like a construction organization 30 years ago, the hierarchy used to be, much more aligned based on age. But it's not uncommon today to have an executive in their 30s that has a senior superintendent or a senior PM who's in their early 60s that reports to them. And why is that unique? Well, those two don't communicate the same way. And as an industry, we've never been an industry, out of like the top 10 things that this industry needs to focus on, communication was probably like number 8.5. Why? Over the last 3 decades? Well, we had better design documents. We had more skilled labor. We had more labor to go around, just general labor. We had trade partners who had time to review the documents, to make a plan, to line out their manpower and their work plan for the project. And for all those reasons, all you needed to have as a superintendent or a leader 30 years ago to be successful was a hammer. When things weren't going your way, what happened? Took off your hard hat and you threw it.
Right.
You put your size 12, where. And I ask people, like, do we feel like that's going to be a management style that's going to get people motivated in their current state? No. I mean, what was successful 30 years ago to a superintendent isn't necessarily the same set of tools and the same set of skills. There's a lot more that goes into that toolbox in our current state.
And is that going to attract new, because you talked about the labor shortage, is that going to attract the folks that are not in the industry to come join the industry?
That's right. Like, this is funny. Keon always tells this story. Like a couple of years ago, he went to his kid's school for like a career day. I think it was for his 8-year-old. And it was, parents get up, they talk about what they do. And, as he's getting up and he's getting ready to get started, he's kind of asking, well, hey, you guys tell me what you guys want to do, when you grow up. First kid gets up. Okay. Second kid gets up, same answer. Third kid gets up, same answer. Fourth kid gets up, same answer. What do you think it was, Spencer? Just out of curiosity. What do you think the number one answer of the kids was when he was asking them in the class?
It's unfair because I've heard him tell this story, so I know that it's influencer,
yeah.
YouTube star,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, it was YouTube influencer. And what's funny about that is we're not an industry that's competing against other firms and organizations within an industry. Our industry right now should be focusing on getting talent against all other industries. Why would someone, like, I think to my kids, I have a 9-year-old, I have a 13-year-old. I mean, in 5 years, in 9 years, for those, my 2 respective kids, like, they're going to be in the workforce. Like, they could be in the workforce within our industry. Why would someone at that age want to enter an industry where you work 60, 70 hours a week, you work every weekend, there's sometimes a lot of travel involved, you're isolated, you're in a hotel room, talk about the mental illness that's within our industry, the substance abuse, the drinking culture, the failed marriages, the missed family opportunities. Why would
suicide?
Exactly. The suicide. Why why would someone want to go enter an industry like that when there's so many other options on the plate for a young lead for a young individual entering the workforce to go do, where you could work remote 3 days a week, or work from home 3 days a week, or
Play
just
video games. Like legitimately.
I'm being honest, like that's what we're competing against. We think we're competing against ourselves. We're not. That's what we're competing against. And
Mhm.
until we learn to do things better, it's just going to continue to get worse. So I go back to that original question, like, why should I engage? Why should I lean? And that's where I turn the spotlight back to that individual. And I'm just like, if I can get consensus with that individual who's skeptical about why should I change the way I do stuff on my job, and at least agree of the dysfunction in the current state, and help that individual learn, like, the game around them has changed. They haven't changed. They haven't done anything wrong, but the game around them has changed. And what used to make that leader really successful isn't necessarily the same set of skills and tools that's going to continue to overcome the current dysfunction. And that's why I feel like lean, it's not a silver bullet. You don't implement last planner system and start to build a healthy culture on your job site. And all right, boys, we're just working 40 hours a week. Everything's going great. I'm not here to blow smoke, because that's not the case. But it is what I feel like is the best tool to bridge the current dysfunction within our industry, to take a step in the right direction,
Mm.
to allow you to start your to the work's better. Like, you're just not constantly living in this reactive firefighting state, but you're able to elevate, you're able to plan, you're able to look ahead, and you're able to actually pour in and support those people on your job site that need you as a leader on your job site. I think for me, that's the why. That's the reason that we do what we do.
I love it. So my take on why lean is in the same vein, and it's a story that I think a couple people have a similar story. I was in Roseville, California on a concrete crew,
Mhm.
and my story is kind of inverse of you. I was in the field and I ran away from it because, like, I don't want to keep doing this. I was an assistant superintendent, and I remember sitting in Roseville, California. It was like 110 degrees that day. I worked for a construction company that did a lot of work for Union Pacific Railroad,
Okay.
and I was sitting in a porta-john, and there was no toilet paper, and I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life. Like,
Right.
I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, and I just remember sitting there being like, I remember in school, I hated school. Like, it didn't click with me, like how it was done, or whatever, my frame of mind, whatever it was. And I remember sitting there being like, I have to get over that. I'm going back to school. I hate this. This is stupid. And anyway, so in my early 20s, I didn't follow a normal, education path. I up and just like quit my job, moved back home, and started, forcing myself to enjoy, to learn. And I think that's the same thing. It's not just, the skilled labor isn't just retiring. There's skilled labor leaving because of the situation that we're in. And one thing that I've heard from others is, it's how are we actually treating, and you brought it up, like throwing hard hats, or, whatever it is. If you're getting treated like garbage, you're going to feel like garbage. And just like what you brought up, it's no wonder we have all the mental illness stuff. And some people run away, and some people just run to drugs, or run to alcohol, or run to,
Whatever their
suicide, or
coping
what.
mechanism is. Yeah.
Exactly. So like that to me is the real reason why, is because we're losing people in them leaving, or them dying, or whatever. And it's a horrible thing that could be fixed.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that called me to arms is, I saw it in myself that I wanted to leave, and seeing that, it's like, well, how many other people are wanting to leave? And so that's why I ultimately stayed with construction, is well, I want to see what I can help change. Like how can I get into a position where I can help affect that? And it's such a big ship to turn that it's going to take a lot to turn around. And I've seen through, a lot of different avenues. There are things that are turning the ship around, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
So, we talk about lean, and maybe it is helpful for anyone who is kind of starting out, because everyone talks about lean in kind of a different way. So before we go, where to start, to you, what is lean?
Yeah. Good question. It's three things. And to me, everyone always has a different answer.
Right.
But for me, it's three things. It's continuous improvement every day. It's reducing waste, only doing things that create value for you. And it's respect for people. And it's not box checking. It's not doing something just because it's part of your company's SOP or whatever. I mean, if it's not creating value for you in your current job site or within your team, stop doing it. It's not lean. And that's my litmus test. That's the filter that I put through everything that I do. And I think, to me, that's the simplest way that I can describe to someone when you're like, well, what the heck is lean? It's respect for people, elimination of waste, and continuous improvement. Those things just kind of constantly swirling around.
I like that. Yeah. And I think the reason why I wanted to make sure that we talked about that a little is sometimes I see folks that have tried lean and it doesn't work. And I think because we put a label on it, it's easy to say, well, that label doesn't work. Where if you step back and say, if you're improving, that's lean. Well, is anyone against improvement? No. Is anyone against respecting people? No, not like outwardly. If you were to just ask them, in a moment, we might get angry and, or something like that, like superintendents of old or but like, if you step back and say, well, if our goal is to respect people and to improve and to only do things that are valuable, like, and, we might talk about waste, and that's, maybe a deeper subject, or maybe continuous improvement in a certain vein, or how do you respect people? Like, those are all like deep conversations, but like at a high level, who isn't in on doing those three things? And I think we all are, which is easy, to your point, to step back and say, well, what is lean? How do we do it? Well, how do we improve? How do we just focus on value? And how do we respect people? Then it doesn't really matter how we get there, as long as those are our goals.
Yeah, no, absolutely 100% agree. That's well said.
So where should someone start? Where would you start? And do we jump into the, like, that's what I love about the book is I haven't seen any other, lean expert or leader out there have such a nonsensical, easy to apply path to start doing lean than what you and Keon said, had Sam go through in the book, of just starting at one point. So
I think where I kind of want to start, and it's not even, let me put it like this. Oftentimes, like, I'll go to a conference, or I'll talk to different GCs, and you'll have like someone like me, maybe like an operational VP type of person, sees lean. It's like, oh, that's great. That's what we need. Let's go get that. Let's go hire a consultant. Come on in. Let's learn Last Planner system. And everything goes great for about 3 months. The pool plans are fantastic. Everything's going, but then a consultant leaves and the team's met with like the first bit of adversity, and it just crumbles, and everyone reverts back to their old behaviors, their tendencies, and their silos, because there was really no culture ever established on a job site. So for me, early when I kind of started on my lean journey, I really focused on the tools first, and over time I became aware you really have to start with people, and you got to start with people right where they're at, and you really got to work to build a culture. I'm not talking about like a company culture. What I'm talking about is literally like a job site culture. What is the culture like on that project? And that culture has to be rooted in some form of mutual respect, trust, and accountability. And if you don't have those three tenets living like really there, not like the false stuff, but like really there, there's no way you're ever going to move and really implement, a really complex management system like Last Planner system. So what Keon and I were really intentional about is, okay, well, how does that look like? Like, where do you start? And for us, the best and most effective way to build that culture within a team is through some simple tools that in time is starting to create that fertile ground, that fertile soil for building that culture of trust, accountability, and mutual respect. For us, it's starting with a daily huddle, taking the opportunity, creating the opportunity for the trade partners to get to know each other, and through facilitating and just talking about the workflow that day. I'm just that simple switch. And then, once you get a little bit of rhythm going there, and then you start weaving in some visual communications. Let's get all of our plans under laminate, or let's pull up the model, whatever visual communication style that makes sense to you and your project, but start communicating through visual communications. And then you start coupling in, lastly, constraint management and managing constraints as a team at that huddle, in that environment. You start driving that accountability up. There's a ton of nuance. Like, this is like 8 hours worth of discussion just on these like three
Right.
simple tools. But for me, like, that's kind of the journey to mastery. Like, you start really small. You just start by creating these opportunities through a huddle and through communicating visually and managing your constraints as a team. And ultimately, you look back after, who knows, a few months of implementing this. Now you might be ready to start having a discussion around Last Planner system. But it's so funny. Like, we've been in an industry that, when I first entered this industry, like, we never had daily huddles. We had that, once a week, weekly subcontractor meeting. It was super adversarial, top down. I made my schedule in my silo, and then I walked in and I threw it down on the table, and I basically just told everybody for the next hour and a half what they were going to be doing. Like, I wasn't creating any type of opportunity or environment for collaboration or communication. And it's no wonder we've never had a sense within our industry to provide that opportunity for trade partners to develop a relationship. We've always called them by their firm name, or by even worse slang name,
Sparky.
like Sparky, Tin Bender. And I was always frustrated, like, when I would have a trade partner come up to me and talk to me about a constraint that literally the trade partner standing right here has the ability to resolve for this other trade partner, but they have to tell me, and I'm the conduit connecting trade partner A to trade partner B. And I'm like, why don't y'all just talk to each other? You're right here. Then I'm like, well, no wonder. Like, I've never created an environment for them to even get to know each other, to even develop a relationship. So there's a lot of nuance that kind of goes into all this of actually how to run a daily huddle, and what do you talk about at a daily huddle that we don't really have time for today. But to me, like, that's where to start. You start small. You start to cultivate that culture on your job site, and really build and establish those tenets of trust, accountability, mutual respect. And then and only then would you be at a point that I would consider willing to kind of start dabbling your toe into Last Planner system.
I like that. One thing that I wrote down as you were talking, you talked about 3 things that make a culture: trust, respect, accountability, and then 3 tools to help foster each one of those. And I don't know if they're one-to-one, or if they all help in their own little way, but as I wrote it down, I wrote them side by side, and it was just interesting because you had said, well, start with huddles, just get together, right?
Yeah.
And I put it next to trust. I was like, to build trust, huddles are a great tool or conduit to help start to foster that. Now, the huddle doesn't do the thing. It's what happens in the huddle, how you speak to others, how they speak in the group, right? Yeah. Yes, I like that. A vehicle to help you build that trust.
Yeah.
I love that. And then visual communication, well, I think I wrote that next to respect, and I think each one of these helps with the other, but like visual communication, well, that's super respectful, because then you could see, oh, well, Bob is planning to be over here in this corner, but I have all my material there. I need to get it out of there tomorrow so that he can work in there come Monday, right? So I think that helps foster that respect where you're helping to see and show each other kind of that plan, right?
Yeah.
And then the accountability, the constraints, that helps, bring those conversations of, well, I'm going to stop because Joe, you didn't give me the answer of, whatever it is, or Spencer, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and whatever it is, right? So I'd never thought of it in that one-to-one relationship. And as I wrote it down, I was like, that's kind of interesting. The trust, huddles, respect, visual management, and accountability with the constraint management.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that approach where it's the focus is how do we build trust in the team? And that's trade partners, everyone as part of the process. How do we foster respect and respect each other so that we can voice our needs and our opinions and what we see from our vantage point, and then hold each other accountable to where we're headed. I absolutely love that. It takes no it does take effort, but like, how easy would it be to just say, hey guys, we're going to meet tomorrow in the morning or tomorrow afternoon or whenever you decide to do a huddle. Like, we're just going to meet for 10 minutes and just start small. Like there's like literally no effort in just saying that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no financial spin. There's no software. There's, you're not having to, it's so tangible and it's easy. All it takes is the willingness and the vision to try to make that environment and that culture better on the job site. That's it.
So you had written this topic for us to discuss, which is interesting. A lot of people in your situation or in your role, would kick their feet up and say, I've made it. I'm VP at a large construction firm. Like that's, but above and beyond, sharing what you've learned outside of your company, you've partnered with Keon to write a book. Yeah. Why?
Yeah, great question. It was interesting, when Keon and I first met, we had an instant kind of relationship and kind of a tie. Like I could see that we both fed off of each other, and it was interesting. He had worked with a superintendent who ended up having to take some personal time, and I got put on Keon's job, and that was actually my first time of working with him on a site. We had known each other just in circles within the firm, and I just kind of took a liking to him. He took a liking to me, and he ended up making a transition within his career and went to a different firm. And we still kind of kept tabs on each other. And we'd often see each other at, LCI Congress or a local COP event in Dallas, and we would kind of keep the discussion going. And it was funny, like probably 2015, 2016, bumping into each other, seeing each other either at Congress or COP events. We were always kind of like, man, is there anything out there that you're seeing, relative to, if I got someone within my firm who wants to learn, like, how to do lean, like from like day one, like where do they start? Like, where do we put the rubber to the road? Have you seen anything? Is anything out there? And we were constantly, each year going to like a Congress, looking for that, either that tool, an exhibit hall, or maybe someone's going to have a breakout presentation. There's going to be something there. And we're getting frustrated because everything that we had at the time were great publications. I'm not taking anything away from it, but it was like, Paul Akers' 2-Second Lean, which is a fantastic book, recommended to everybody, or Toyota Way, or, stuff coming out of UC Berkeley white papers. But it's not like our target audience is, it just didn't like compute to construction, like, right. And not just to construction, but like to the men and women in the field getting the work done. And to me, like, that's the end user, like that's the stakeholder. And like, why is there no content for that person? Because to us, it's like, when I think about the construction industry, to me, like the only value add role in the construction life cycle is the trade partner in the field putting work in place. We all exist to make that as easy as possible for that person to put the units in place. And unfortunately, our industry's made it as tough as possible for that. We treat it like a race and not a team sport. We've made it very adversarial through, obviously contracting layers and the whole
Right.
nine. It's just, we were just needing to find a resource that we could help both selfishly within our own firms, but then share with other people within our COP and our communities that are trying to implement these tools and methodologies, because they saw value in having, a progressive firm who wanted to treat people differently and create a culture built on a lot of those tenets that we've talked about today. So it was interesting in 2017, I think we were flying to Anaheim for LCI Congress. It was funny, like I boarded a Southwest flight and Keon happenstance, he's on the plane too. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me grab a seat with him. And we were flying out. We're like, maybe this is the Congress. We're going to, find that tool or find that resource. And we're flying out. We're probably like over New Mexico at this point, and like we're talking about like, well, what if we took out like the safety manual from the plane, and we're like, well, what if we did like a how-to guide, and it was like something that could be folded up and put in their vest, and it's like step 1, daily huddle, step 2, visual communication, step 3, constraint management, step 4, blast planner system. And we thought we were on to something. We're like, okay, yeah, we'll this like a little infographic, something put in the vest. We'll start there. And at the Congress, Patrick Lencioni was the keynote. Pat Lencioni, ideal team player, 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Death by meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, awesome business leader. And he did the keynote and just blew my socks off. And I remember go back and read all of his books. And it was a few weeks later, I remember like I woke up and I was like, it's a story. It's a book. It's not a pamphlet. It's not a infographic on how to do it. And it was funny. I remember talking to Keon. I was like, I think it's a book. And he's like, you're out of your mind. And I was like, and not just a book, like not technical writing. Like, I think it's a fable. He's like, you're out of your mind. And I'm like, no, just here, and then we kind of talked about it, and that was it. So it took a while, probably a year and a half of, long nights, weekends after work, trying to stitch together the content into a manner that could really be tailored in the right way for those last planners, the men and women in the field, to actually consume it and for it to make sense. And that was really it. I mean, that was kind of the whole genesis of how all that came together, and how it's been. So it's been an amazing journey. It's been a great, it's been so awesome and rewarding to find people find value in it and actually help implement lean tools and methodologies and build cultures on their job site based on those tendencies. Because our thought is, if we can, rising water raises all boats, and if we can continue to improve the industry, we can start to combat a lot of those things that we started this conversation off with earlier this morning.
I love it. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like the timeline. That's right around the time when I was searching for something as well. I was trying to figure out what lean looked like in construction, and I had worked for a crane company prior to 2016, and I had done some process improvement stuff, and I had looked online for stuff like that, and I'd found something that was termed Lean Six Sigma, and I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I applied it to within the logistics and operations of that company. And then when I went to mid-large size general contractor, Oakland. When I went there, I was trying to figure out, well, how does that apply here? Because I joined in the scheduling department, which was a very, very different for me. I had never done that before. And I got the same feedback from every single superintendent about schedule, that it's, Mickey Mouse, whatever, I could shove it up, where, it's your schedule, not mine. No one looks at it. It was the same. It was like, well, why are we doing it then? If nobody likes it and it's not something we build off of, and it's not reflecting reality. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, one, am I doing it wrong? So I got like every training and certification I could get on the thing. And then it was like, well, no, I think we just need to like look at how we need to improve it. Like, and so I was looking into it, and yeah, there was like nothing back in the day. Like you said, a lot of like technical, academia type, white papers. You mentioned UC Berkeley, and there's some other universities as well. And LCI was around, obviously. I mean, they've been around since, the late 90s. So it's, that's there, but there was no good content and resources. And the thing that was interesting to me is
not for the field. I mean, there was a lot of
correct.
that LCI was
that's what
in regards to like IPD or IFO agreements, or the back end owner side of it, but actually for the implementation of
where the value is created
in the field, like, well, where's this stuff at?
Yeah, because it's interesting too, because the Toyota way and like all the like lean stuff out of Toyota always talks about, well, the shop floor where the actual value is being created, right? It's like, well, why is that not our focus? Like, that's where the value creation is, it changes from raw material into building through the construction, fabrication, supply chain construction process, right? And, the design itself is part of that value, understanding like what to build is a process in order to generate that value. So yes. And, when I read the Lean Builder, it resonated so deeply. It was the 2019 LCI Congress where everyone got a copy of the book
in Fort Worth.
Yep. And I remember I had never heard of either you or Keon before 2019. And I got the book, and there was all this buzz about the Lean Builder. And so I sat up and I read it while I was there, and I like changed all the classes that I was like going, all the little breakouts that I was going to, trying to like more align with like what was going on with this book. And it so resonated with me from this is what was missing and why I left the industry. And to me, it's one of the reasons that lit another passion underneath what I want to help and contribute to the industry of even the small things like building trust and fostering respect and accountability on a job site can have the largest impacts and help the next generation, or even people out there in different industries, stay or come to construction. And I'm super grateful for you and Keon taking the time to write the book and doing such a stellar job on it. I think anyone out there, if you're watching this book review, please take the time and read this book. This is the best written book for construction builders, in my opinion. I haven't read any other book that's so applicable to construction builders than this book. I mean, there's lots of great books out there that apply to construction, and we can take insights from it, but this is specifically for those of us in the field that need a better way to do things for any of the myriad of reasons that we have, because our industry is lacking.
Yeah. Appreciate that feedback, Spencer. That means a lot, and especially with that being the target audience we had in mind when we put the pen to paper. I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Well, if you were to leave one final word to anyone out there that's trying to find a better way to do things in construction, what would it be?
Start small and don't get discouraged. You've heard that saying, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. Kind of the same applies, when starting and beginning a lean journey. Just try to find those small wins and try to continuously improve each day a little bit better. And you're going to meet adversity. You're going to, take a step forward and get knocked back a couple of steps on some days, but just keep your head up and continue to plug away, and to just start small and keep going and keep plugging at it. I know that might sound trivial or too easy of an application point, but it's so true. Especially when trying to find value through creating a culture like this or implementing tools and methodologies like this.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's been a pleasure, an honor. And for anyone that is still watching, if you post a comment, I'm going to be sending out a free copy of the Lean Builder to you. So go ahead and drop a comment down below. And thank you so much. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care. See y'all.